Hello, I'm putting together this guide for the Vlookup function, and I specifically am putting this together to help everybody in the teaching world when we get Google form responses for assessments. How can we put all of the information together in a one-stop shop that shows who's done and who's not done and presents it in a way that looks like our gradebook? One of the things you need to know about today or be able to work with and feel comfortable with is multiple sheets. Within one spreadsheet document, you can have multiple sheets. You add them using this button at the very bottom on the far left in Sheets, Google Sheets. There are other functions too like this in Excel. When you want to add another sheet to work with, you simply press the button and you have your sheet. At the bottom, you can rename your sheet, change its color, etc., etc., etc. We're going to be using two of them today, the data that comes from the form that I use, and then the one that will report the grades in the end. Another thing you're going to need is a master student email list. The email list that the forms generate when the kids are putting in information is the most accurate way to compare between grade lists that you want to use and the form information that's being gathered by Google. This is going to be the master index between the two spreadsheets. It'll be the thing that the computer uses to compare the two and pull information from one into the other. I've grabbed a list of emails that I had just within my drive as a set of data that we can use today. It's staff members from ISD 709 that for some reason I had. I don't even know how old it is. But this becomes my master list. All of these are the emails for the class that I'll be using to show you this function. So I've called this now the final grade sheet, and then this is the data from the form sheet. A third thing you need to know about and be able to work with, feel comfortable, is something called a named range. This is when you highlight a range of data with your mouse and give it a name. Then use that named range to help you. The place we want to establish a named range is the information that's coming from your Google form. You want to make sure you grab the column that includes the email because that's the one we want to compare, and the column that goes through the information that you want. In this case, for me, it's the final grade and their names and the email. This becomes the range of information that I want to use in the comparing. Now I know this because I've done this plenty of times before. I know that students don't always turn in their information right away. And if I know, for instance, that I have 74 students that I'm going to eventually see the scores for, I'm going to make sure that the range goes all the way down and includes all of those students who have not yet turned in forms. This is really an important part of the name range, that you have the total number of students that you're going to expect to see submit items, not just the ones that already have so far. Because I don't know if you're like me, even a week after, I'll have students that still haven't turned in their work. So your name range should be all the way for the number of students that you know you have to account for. So in this case, I'm just going to say 74. So it goes past the data that you've collected and leaves open all the other ones that will come in within the next few days or even while you're working on the form itself. So you have this highlighted, and then you go to data and you want to go to this named ranges. There's going to be a thing that pops up on the right, and it's already highlighted for you a place where you can name that range. And if you name that range whatever you want to, just remember what you call it. You want to call it something like grades, whatever you like. And then you just hit done. Now, I don't know if you see this, but I've already named that range. And so I've got two of them now, the one that I originally did and I'll use later, and the one I just did as an example for you right now. I'm going to edit that one and get rid of it just so it doesn't confuse us all. So the name range that I have, I called final grade and goes down to the 70th cell. The last thing, and maybe the most complicated thing, but if you've done any coding or any work, or if you just like computers in general, I think this will make sense with some explanation. This is the Vlookup function that we're going to use to do the job we want done today. This is fancy code that we'll use to look for students' emails in one sheet, grab that information from that sheet, and then bring it over to the other one in the way that you want it to look. The function itself will look like this with inside one cell. The equal sign is very important, as are all of the parts of it, commas, parentheses, everything that's in here is very important. Miss one part and you'll get an error message. The first section is the VLOOKUP section, and that's just the spreadsheet's designation for this process. There are many functions that an Excel or any kind of spreadsheet can use, and this is one of the typical ones, and it has a bunch of functions that come with it. After the parentheses, the next one you want is the designation of the cell you want to compare. I'll show you this a little bit later on, but the A is the column number and the 2 is the row number. After the comma, the next part is the name ranged that you want to use. The thing I just showed you where you pick a whole section of data, give it a name, this is where that goes. After the comma, the next part is which column from the name range do you want to bring over? Which information are you looking for? In this case, it'll be the fourth column from the left. In the name ranged, I have email, then first name, then last name, and the fourth column is the grade, ES or N. That's the piece I want to transfer. The last one, I don't even know what this is, but it's necessary, so make sure you put it in. Then you have an N parentheses. I like to add a separate function on top that sort of encompasses the entire thing. It's an if-error function. And what it does is if it can't find the information I'm looking for, then it'll say not done in the student's grade rather than error, which is the typical one that it will lay out. The reason why this is important is the error will also appear if you've missed a comma or a parentheses, but the words not done will appear if there's no grade for the student, which I think is an important designation. So I would really recommend that you use this format, the VLOOKUP in the middle with the if error string on the outside with a not done, or you can put anything you want there within the quotation marks. Now we're going to get to the actual business of putting in this VLOOKUP function. This was the data that we collected, the data from the form in one sheet. We've moved to the second sheet, the final grade, and this is where the VLOOKUP function will go. Right here in the place where I want the grade to appear, I'll click that cell. The first thing I'll do is press equal sign. The next thing I'll do is put in VL, and you can see as soon as I put in VL, there's a place where you can just hit enter because the VLOOKUP function has already been pulled up for you. The VLOOKUP function will actually put in the first parentheses, which is, I think, really beautiful part of this program. Then the $sign. Then we want column A, and we want row number 2. You can see it becomes colorized, and it also shows you which of the cells you are actually writing about by highlighting that cell. So Diana Anstedt, ISD 709 has become highlighted with the same color as the $sign A2. A comma goes next. Then you want to put in the named range here. It's final grade. Oops, I misspelled. And you see at the very bottom, it says one of the things that you could use is this data, and that's what I want. Final grade goes there. When it goes in, it'll turn a color purple. At least on mine, it turns purple, and then you know it's right. Then you want to hit a comma again. The next part is which of the columns in the final grade. There are 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first one was email, the second one was first name, the third one was last name, and the last one was the grade. So I want 4, column 4 from left to right, then a comma. Then this is the place where you have to put in that word false. And again, don't know. It has to do with the logic of how this thing goes. Okay. Now we have the whole function correct, but we have not put in the if error part. So I'm going to start with that now. Put this back in place. If error. Parentheses. At the end, we have to put in a comma, and then we want to write in whatever message we want when the student does not have a grade. And a parentheses, and I believe we're finished. As soon as you hit enter, you should see, if the student has a grade, you should see the grade appear right away from the previous sheet. It should be immediate. If you get an error in this message, that is possibly because you forgot a comma. I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. I'm going to this cell, and I'm going to get rid of one of the commas right here before the not graded. If I remove that one piece, I will suddenly see now that there's an error. And if I look here, they'll give me a message, formula parse error, which usually means there's a typo, something's missing. I put the comma back in, and it pulls the grade for Diana Anstedt from the previous data. Diana is right here, and her grade was an excellent or E. Over here, it pulls it over. Now, you might be saying, well, how is that helpful? It becomes helpful when we apply it to the entire class. Grab the first cell, pull all the way down, and pull all the way down to 70 because students will add later. No, I'm pulling all the way down here. This is the master list. And then Control D. And what that does is that brings that function that you wrote in the first one, and it brings it down to all the rest, and it changes the cell designation so it keeps looking for the new one. As soon as I do this now, the students who are not done are revealed. The beauty of this is that this last form is not nearly as complicated and has all that stuff with it. And then what it does is it puts in the spaces for the students that have not yet finished their work. So when I go now to grade, I can simply transfer quickly all of these grades to my gradebook and also put in zeros or spaces for those students who are not yet done. If I try and take that same information from here, I end up running into a problem where I may put in scores for students that are not done, but if I'm not looking carefully and comparing left to right, these names with the names on mine, these names that come in from this form are usually in time. And even if you sort them by name, it won't let you see which of the kids are not done. I've saved lots and lots of time by doing this process, and it just is so much easier to get the grades accurately reported for me using this function. I hope it works for you.